I mentioned in my first sabbatical video diary, when asking the question, who are we, what makes us who we are, I mentioned our ancestry and our DNA. And as part of my trying to find out more about how that affects me, I've come to the Church of St Patrick's in Armagh Common, in between Lurgan and Portadown to the southwest of Belfast. My great-great-great-grandfather, Daniel Heaney, was a farmer in a place called Drumnagoon, just a couple of miles from here. Drumnagoon has now been largely swallowed up by Craigavon. Daniel had at least two sons who stayed in Drumnagoon all their lives. Daniel, who never married, and John, my great-great-grandfather, who was married here in 1866 to Elizabeth McAlinden. John and Elizabeth had two sons, James, my great-grandfather, who was born here in 1867, and Daniel, who was born in 1870. Now, sadly, Elizabeth died in 1871, and John remarried in 1876, and James and Daniel did not stay in this area. James, I know, came to England. Married, had my grandfather in Brentford in 1901, and my grandfather, who was called Daniel, married an Anglican. My father, who was also called Daniel, was baptised as an Anglican, as indeed was I, Timothy Daniel Heaney. The 1800s were a very, very tough time in Ireland. There was poverty, there was the overbearing rule of the British, and there was famine, the Great Famine of 1845 to 52, during which 1 million Irish people died and 2 million people left the country as part of the diaspora. And although my great-grandfather James and Daniel left 20 to 30 years later than that, nevertheless, that ongoing tradition of poverty, of struggle, of Irish people leaving went on through, and they were part of that.
One insight into this comes from Father Lawrence Morgan, the Catholic priest who married John and Elizabeth and who is buried with 6 other clergy at the front of the church. The diocesan website says, Father Morgan was parish priest from 1831 until 1878, and his pastorate coincided with many barely tolerable features of 19th century Irish life. The harsh penal laws went hand in hand with the spread of abject poverty. The conditions of the poor worsened, and then came the famine, when the weak were virtually wiped out in a 12-month period, and many of the strong and youthful resolved to depart from their native country forever. To this scenario of partial gloom, Father Morgan truly brought faith, hope, and charity. On several occasions after the funerals of deceased men, he noted in the parish register, I returned the offering to the widow and her poor children, who have been left in destitute conditions.
I don't know exactly where my Heaney ancestors who came from this area are buried, but there is a Heaney burying ground just behind me, and it's quite probable that some of them are here. Wherever they may be, I'm glad that I came here to remember them. And I'm going to go into St Patrick's now and light a candle for them.